This video is brought to you by CKGSB, China's only not-for-profit independent business school.
My own observation of the success stories and the failure stories of Chinese acquisitions overseas is that when Chinese firms go for giants, especially giants in trouble, in big trouble, then these acquisitions tend to be much more difficult than the smaller ones. But unfortunately, that has been the kind of target that Chinese firms go after, like Lenovo acquired IBM PC, right? TCL purchased the TV division of Thomson, and BenQ acquired the cell phone business of Siemens. So all these acquisitions had one common element, or I would say two common elements. The targets are big. We're talking about big businesses in big industries, and they were all in deep trouble. Relatively speaking, the Chinese side or the acquirer oftentimes were even smaller than the target firm, or at least as compared to the whole corporation. But they may not buy the whole thing, they buy part of it. But even then, the target tends to be pretty large. So these deals tend to be much more difficult because in the Chinese analogy, we call it snake trying to swallow an elephant. So how to digest that kind of a huge target in big trouble, I think is still a huge challenge for Chinese firms. Because they believe, first of all, size is power. A lot of Chinese business people believe that the only way to become powerful is to become sizable first. The CEO of TCL, Mr. Li Dongsheng, once said, to be powerful is the ultimate goal, but to be sizable is the only way to get there. So basically, he believed that if you divide it into two steps, the first step is to be big, and then you will be powerful, profitable, influential, and so on. So when he saw the Thomson opportunity, he was most willing to grasp it than any other Chinese firms. Actually, Thomson talked to a number of Chinese potential buyers, but no one was interested except Mr. Li. And because Mr. Li held that belief that bigness is the way, leading to being powerful, he embraced the opportunity, but then paid dearly for that. It was a big mistake, actually. So that's number one, the belief that size is ultimately related to success. Second, Chinese firms look for resources and capabilities that they don't already own from these target firms. And what kind of resources and capabilities Chinese firms lack? So we're talking about either natural resources or brand and the distribution channel. So natural resources, that's one type, right? The Chinese oil and the petroleum companies and other natural resource companies have been buying left and right for these natural resources. So that's one type. And then if you go for a brand, go for technology, go for distribution channels that you don't already own, then who is most likely to own these resources? Of course, the big firms. Okay? If you're talking about small firm, then usually they don't have a very well-known brand name. They don't have the kind of distribution channel you need. So I think that's the reason why Chinese firms often narrow down their target to these big ones, just like Geely. If you want to transform yourself to be a global player in the auto industry, then who do you buy? Of course, you buy a big target rather than an unknown firm with some technology. You want to have some kind of, kind of wholesale deal where you can get everything that you need from this one acquisition: the brand, the technology, and we're talking about the entire package rather than some kind of piecemeal approach, and the distribution channel. So these things usually are only available with big firms. I think probably from the grassroots development of Chinese enterprises. The Chinese business leaders of today, many of them grow out of the earlier stage of the Chinese economic development. That's the 80s to the year 2000. And during that period, the biggest challenge was to meet demand as quickly as possible and quicker than your competitors. So these people grew up with a mentality of speed and the coverage in mind. In other words, they believe that whoever can get there first and the quickest is going to dominate the market. So even today, I think some of them still have that belief when they go abroad. They still believe that we need to be a big player in order to control our suppliers, deal with our buyers more effectively, so on and so forth. So I think they had that from their past. When the market had explosive growth, then of course you need to grow faster than your competitors, because you're talking about mostly a new market. It's like a pie, right? If the market is not growing, then it's about how to divide the pie and get the largest piece. But if the pie is growing very fast, then you can forget about how to divide the existing pie. Rather, you want to focus on the new area. I think that's what these leading Chinese companies have done very well. So in the end, then they believe that the size is everything. And to some extent, that's true. The reason successful companies like Gomi have been so powerful was exactly because of their size. Because in China, sometimes business ethics is not that important. People believe in bargaining power. If you're more powerful, if you control something that I need or I rely on, then I have to give in. So the Gomi model was to control the distribution channel of home appliances as much as possible, then ask for more and more resources from the suppliers. And because its market share kept growing, then these suppliers had to give in to ever-increasing demand from Gomi. So what we saw then was that the net profit margin of Gomi and the Suning will be 3 to 4%, while the appliance makers end up with only a 1% net profit margin. So that's all based on bargaining power, and the bargaining power was based on size. I think success stories like that really educated the Chinese business leaders that size is number one. If the technology is superb, if you target a niche market that's kind of an upscale market, so we call that a creaming strategy. You get the cream of the milk, right? It's only a small part, but that's the richest part, and will potentially get you the best return. So a lot of Chinese firms now believe that they don't have to target the mass market. As long as they can target the most affluent segment and be able to create value for these people, then they can be very, very profitable. So you do have a choice. In the 80s, you didn't. You have to meet the demand of the mass market at once, and people did not differentiate as much because everybody had like humble start, and people didn't have as much money, so they were not very discriminating. But today, rich people are very rich, right? And you also have a middle class emerging in China. So you're talking about several segments in the population, which all have their unique need to be met, to be delivered by a company. So that means you have a lot of opportunities for differentiation in the market. So size is no longer the only option. Initially, of course, there will be some suspicion about what the Chinese will do to the local firm. Companies and the employees and other stakeholders will naturally, be worried about the prospect of the company. Will they kind of just move all the operation to China? Would they lay off a lot of people? Damage the brand, things like that. So that's why Geely, in the process of buying Volvo, had to go over all these difficult, kind of challenges. But in the end, they proved that they can be a responsible buyer. They keep the brand, committed to develop the brand further, didn't lay off any people, and invested a lot of money to turn it around. So when the second company, Chinese firm, tried to purchase Saab, I think, both, as you know, Saab and Volvo are a Swedish company. So people in Sweden were very enthusiastic about it. They treat the Chinese people very well. The moment they heard that Chinese buyers are in town, people are very, very, excited about it. So that change of attitude really showed how much Chinese firms can do and what kind of precedent we can set for the followers. And of course, that's Europe. That's a little bit more friendly politically than the US. In the US, companies like Huawei and so on will have a tough battle, or I would say an uphill battle to fight, because there are all kinds of suspicions on top of the ones that I just mentioned. The US side probably would look at things that the Europeans don't care as much, such as your connection with the government, with the military, things like that. So Americans will see Huawei as a government-backed company, although there's no strong evidence or no clear evidence to support that. But the US side has blocked at least 2 acquisition attempts by Huawei. The second one, called 3Leaf, actually was a very small company with annual revenue of $2 million. I think the acquisition price was $2 million US, very small deal. But even that deal was blocked by the US government, was almost on the table of the president to veto if the Chinese side decided to appeal. So in order to avoid that kind of confrontation, Huawei withdrew the attempt. Okay, so that shows that in the US it's more sensitive. But if you are a publicly traded company in other less sensitive industries, I think you can still show your goodwill over time.